The silence of space had never been more deafening. Commander Rena Vakel stood at the viewport of the Silent Strider, her feline eyes reflecting the distant stars as she surveyed what remained of the once mighty Galactic Alliance. Debris from destroyed space stations floated aimlessly through the void, silent monuments to a civilization that had stood for thousands of years. Now, only ruins remained. Rena's fur rippled along her neck as she suppressed a shudder. As a hybrid, half-humanoid, half-feline, she had served the Alliance with unwavering loyalty for decades. Now she commanded one of the last operational ships of the old regime, a responsibility that weighed on her like a neutron star. "Commander," called a voice behind her. "We've completed the damage assessment." Turning, Rena faced her technical advisor Yerrick, an insectoid being whose compound eyes reflected the dim emergency lighting of the bridge. His exoskeleton bore several cracks, battle scars from their narrowest escape yet. "How bad?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Shields at 23% capacity. Primary drive functioning at minimal output. Life support stable, but..." Yerrick's mandibles clicked anxiously. "We won't survive another encounter." Rena nodded, her gaze returning to the viewport. The Silent Strider had once been a diplomatic vessel, repurposed for evacuation and reconnaissance after the fall. Its sleek design and advanced cloaking systems had kept them alive when larger warships had fallen. But each encounter with the enemy left them weaker, more vulnerable. The security team stood silently nearby, a ragtag group of survivors from a dozen different Alliance species. Many bore scars, both visible and invisible, from battles they had no hope of winning. Their eyes held the same haunted look, the knowledge that they were merely postponing the inevitable. "Set course for the outer rim," Rena ordered. "We need to find a safe harbor for repairs then." "Commander," the communications officer, a slender, crystalline being, suddenly straightened at her station. "I'm picking up a signal." Rena moved to the console, ears twitching forward. "Alliance." "Unknown, but..." The officer's translucent fingers danced across the controls. "It's using an ancient identification protocol, one I haven't seen in the archives." A sense of déjà vu washed over Rena. "Origin." "A star system on the far edge of the galaxy." The officer looked up, confusion evident in her faceted eyes. "A planet designated as Earth." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. Earth, a name from legend, a world said to have been destroyed or abandoned millennia ago. Earth was supposedly eradicated during the expansion era, Yerrick said, voicing what everyone was thinking. Their species was believed extinct. "Play the signal," Rena commanded, trying to keep the desperate hope from her voice. Static filled the bridge, followed by a series of pulses that formed a clear mathematical sequence. Prime numbers, the universal indicator of sentient communication. Then, words in the standard galactic language. "To any Alliance vessels, we are monitoring your conflict. If assistance is required, respond on this frequency. We await confirmation. Earth defense remains." Silence fell over the bridge. Earth defense. Humans, a species from ancient history, mentioned only in the oldest texts. A species whose legendary aggression had led to their supposed self-destruction long before Rena's time. "It could be a trap," Yerrick warned. "The Ultrad are known to use deception." Rena considered this. The Ultrad, the malevolent force that had systematically dismantled the Alliance, planet by planet, system by system. A shadowy enemy whose true form remained unknown, striking from darkness with overwhelming force. "What other choice do we have?" Rena finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're running out of places to hide." She straightened her posture, making the decision that might doom them all, or save what remained of the Alliance. "Set course for Earth. Maximum stealth protocols." She looked around at her weary crew. If humans still exist, if they've somehow survived all this time, perhaps there's hope for the rest of us. As the Silent Strider changed course, Rena couldn't help but wonder what they would find. Humans, beings of legend, known for their resourcefulness and their violence in equal measure. Had they truly remained hidden all these millennia? And if so, why emerge now? The fragmented signal continued to pulse through the ship's communication system, a broken lifeline in the crushing darkness of space. #2. The human encounter. The journey to Earth took 14 standard cycles. 14 cycles of silent running, avoiding debris fields and abandoned outposts. 14 cycles of watching for Ultrod scouts, of nursing the failing systems of the Silent Strider with makeshift repairs and desperate improvisation. Yarrick worked tirelessly. In the engine room, his multi-jointed limbs allowing him to reach places others couldn't. The radiation from damaged sectors had already claimed 2 of his crew, their bodies given to the void with solemn ceremony. The rest continued, driven by the faintest glimmer of hope offered by the mysterious signal. "Tell me about humans," Rena asked the ship's historian during one of their meal periods. "What do the old records say?" The historian, an ancient being with translucent skin that revealed the slow flow of luminescent blood beneath, considered the question. "They were unpredictable," she finally said. "Shorter-lived than most Alliance species, but remarkably adaptable. They spread quickly through their solar system before encountering other civilizations. And then, the records become fragmented. There are accounts of conflicts, of diplomatic tensions. Then, nothing. Most scholars assumed they destroyed themselves in some internal war, or were wiped out by an early encounter with a hostile species." Rena nodded, digesting this sparse information. It wasn't much to go on. As they approached the Sol system, Rena ordered long-range scans. The results were puzzling. "Very little activity detected," reported the sensor officer. "Some mining operations in the asteroid belt, minor settlements on several moons, but nothing suggesting a major civilization. And Earth itself, heavy atmospheric interference. Cannot penetrate for detailed scans." Rena frowned. "Approach with caution. Maintain stealth protocols." As they entered the outer boundary of the system, they passed the wreckage of what must have been a battle, ancient by the look of it. Twisted metal, frozen in the vacuum of space, told a story of violent conflict. "These hulks," Yarrick observed, studying the sensor data. "They match early Ultra design patterns." Rena's fur bristled. "You're saying humans fought the Ultra before?" "It would appear so. And survived, which is unprecedented." The implications hung in the air like a storm cloud. No other species had successfully repelled an Ultrod invasion. Yet here was evidence suggesting humans had done just that, perhaps centuries ago. As they approached Earth's moon, a sudden alert blared through the ship. Proximity warning. Something was there, but the sensors couldn't define it. "Evasive maneuvers," Rena commanded. But before the helmsman could respond, their ship shuddered to a halt, caught in some invisible field. "Propulsion systems offline," reported the helmsman, panic edging into her voice. "We're being held in place." A voice crackled through their communication system, speaking perfect galactic standard. "Unidentified vessel. You have entered Earth defense perimeter. Remain stationary and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to engage weapons or drive systems will result in immediate neutralization." The voice was cold, precise, leaving no room for negotiation. Rena exchanged glances with Yarrick. They had no choice. Acknowledged, she responded. "We are a refugee vessel from the Galactic Alliance. We come seeking assistance." "Understood," came the reply, devoid of emotion. "Prepare your docking bay." Through the viewport, space itself seemed to shimmer, and suddenly a massive structure appeared where moments before there had been nothing. A defense station, perfectly camouflaged, housing what appeared to be powerful weapons arrays. "Cloaking technology," whispered Yarrick in awe. "Far beyond our capabilities." Within minutes, a sleek vessel detached from the station and approached the Silent Strider. It was gunmetal gray, bearing no insignia, its design unlike anything in Alliance records. All sharp angles and hidden weapons ports. Rena met the boarding party in the docking bay, accompanied by Yarrick and 2 security officers. The airlock cycled, and 4 figures stepped through. They were humanoid, clad in form-fitting armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their faces were obscured by visored helmets, and they moved with precise, coordinated efficiency. Each carried a weapon Rena didn't recognize, compact but exuding an aura of deadly potential. One stepped forward, slightly taller than the others. "I am Commander Hearth of Earth Defense Force," he said, removing his helmet to reveal a face of sharp angles and pale skin. His eyes were a startling blue, assessing Rena with cold calculation. "State your purpose here." Rena straightened her posture. "I am Commander Rena Vakel of the Alliance vessel, Silent Strider. We received your transmission. We seek assistance against an enemy that has destroyed much of the Galactic Alliance." "The Old Trod," Hearth stated, not a question. "You know of them." Rena's tail swished involuntarily. "We have historical experience." Hearth's expression remained impassive. "Follow me to your command center. We have much to discuss." In the ship's conference room, Rena explained the situation, the systematic destruction of Alliance worlds, the shadowy nature of the Ultrod, their seemingly unstoppable advance. Hearth listened without interruption, his face betraying nothing. When Rena finished, he remained silent for several long moments. "Earth withdrew from galactic affairs over 2,000 years ago," he finally said. "We found interspecies politics problematic. The conflicts were endless, the alliances shifting. We chose isolation and obscurity over continued involvement. Yet you maintained this defense system," Yerrick observed. "You were preparing for something." A thin smile crossed Hearth's face. "Humans have never excelled at trusting. We prepared for many contingencies." "Then you'll help us?" Rena asked, unable to keep a note of desperation from her voice. "That remains to be determined." Hearth's eyes narrowed. "Humanity paid a heavy price during our last encounter with the Ultrod. We have no desire to repeat the experience." "The Alliance is being systematically destroyed," Rena argued. "Billions have already died. If the Ultrod aren't stopped, if the mighty Alliance couldn't stop them," Hearth interrupted, "what makes you think we can, or should?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "Because you've done it before," Rena said quietly. "And because if they finish with us, they'll eventually come for you, no matter how well you hide." Hearth's expression darkened. "You presume much about our capabilities and our concerns." "I presume nothing. I ask for help because there's no one else left to ask." After a long silence, Hearth spoke again. "I will consult with my superiors. In the meantime, your ship will remain here. You may conduct necessary repairs with our assistance." He rose to leave, then paused. "You must understand, Earth's policy has been non-intervention for centuries. Changing that would require compelling reasons." "What would you consider compelling?" Rena asked. Hearth considered this. "Prove to me that the Alliance is worth saving, that it stands for something more than its own perpetuation." His eyes locked with Rena's. "Show me that you're fighting for something that matters." After Hearth and his team departed, Yerrick approached Rena privately. "You trust these humans?" he asked, mandibles clicking nervously. Rena stared out at the hidden Earth station, considering the question. "I'm not sure we have the luxury of trust anymore," she finally said. "But they fought the Ultrod before and survived. That makes them our best hope. Or our greatest threat," Yerrick countered. "Their technology, their methods. They've clearly been preparing for war all this time." Rena thought of the scars on her ship, of the billions already lost to the Ultrod advance. "Then let's hope they're on our side when it comes." #3. The war's turn. 3 days later, Commander Hearth returned with a proposal. "My superiors have authorized a limited operation," he announced in the Silent Strider's conference room. "A strike team will accompany your vessel to a suspected Ultrod forward base. If successful, we'll consider further cooperation." Rena studied the human officer, searching for any hint of emotion behind his disciplined exterior. "A test run," she stated flatly, "if you prefer that terminology." She murmured. "It's meant to," Hearth said quietly. "They always create the illusion of weakness to draw in attackers." Rena turned to him sharply. "You know their tactics? We've studied them. For centuries." A grim smile touched Hearth's lips. "They don't change much. Confidence born of consistent success." The Silent Strider approached using its most advanced stealth systems, slipping between the automated sentry drones that orbited the barren planetoid. They landed in a narrow canyon, hidden from orbital scans. Hart's team prepared to disembark, donning their armor, which Rena now saw was far more sophisticated than it initially appeared. The surface rippled slightly, adjusting to the ambient light conditions, nearly invisible in the canyon shadows. "Your mission parameters?" Rena asked. "Infiltrate the installation, extract data on fleet movements, place demolition charges at key structural points, withdraw without detection." Hart checked his weapon. A deceptively simple-looking device. "Standard procedure. I'll assign a security detail to accompany you," Rena began, but Hart shook his head. "We work alone. Your crew can monitor from the ship and provide emergency extraction if needed." Before Rena could protest further, the human strike team had departed, moving like shadows across the rocky terrain toward the Ultrad installation half a kilometer distant. Yarrick joined Rena in the monitoring station, where feeds from remote drones showed the humans' progress. "Their confidence borders on arrogance," he observed. "Only if they fail," Rena replied. Through the drone feeds, they watched as the human team approached the perimeter defenses, a series of automated turrets and sensor arrays. Instead of avoiding them, one team member stepped forward, deploying a small device that emitted a pulse of energy. The defensive systems continued to sweep, but now ignored the human presence completely. "Impressive," Yarrick admitted. "They've developed countermeasures specific to Ultrad technology." The team reached the main entrance, where another specialist applied what appeared to be a gel-like substance to the control panel. The massive door slid open without triggering any alarms. Once inside, the humans moved with practiced efficiency, clearly following a predetermined plan. They split into 3 groups, moving through the facility like water, finding the path of least resistance. When they encountered the first Ultrad patrol, Rena tensed, expecting a firefight. Instead, the humans simply froze in place, their armor shifting color to match the surroundings so perfectly that the Ultrad passed within meters without detecting them. "That's not standard camouflage technology," Yarrick whispered. "That's something else entirely." The drone feed followed one 2-person team as they reached what appeared to be a central data hub. While one stood guard, the other connected a device to the Ultrad terminal. Within seconds, information began flowing. "They're bypassing encryption that our best specialists couldn't crack," Yarrick said, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Who are these people?" The data extraction completed just as an alarm finally sounded somewhere in the facility. The humans showed no sign of panic. They completed their tasks with the same methodical precision, placing small devices at key structural junctions throughout the installation. When an Ultrad security team finally cornered 2 of the humans in a corridor, Rena expected to witness their deaths. Instead, she saw something that would haunt her memories forever. The humans dropped their stealth protocols and engaged directly. Their movements became a blur of lethal efficiency, their weapons discharging not energy beams, but some kind of projectile that passed straight through the Ultrad's defensive shields. Where the Ultrad moved with machine-like precision, the humans fought with a fluid adaptability that seemed to anticipate every counter. It wasn't a battle. It was execution. Within minutes, the human team had regrouped at the extraction point, all objectives complete, with minimal resistance encountered. "Detonation in 30 seconds, reported the team leader as they boarded the shuttle. "Recommend immediate withdrawal." The Silent Strider was already breaking orbit when the charges detonated. The explosion was far more powerful than the small devices should have been capable of producing. A chain reaction that consumed the entire installation and sent shockwaves through the planetary crust. Back on the bridge, Hart reviewed the data they'd extracted. Valuable intelligence, he confirmed. Fleet movements, supply lines, command structure. Rena should have felt elated at their success. Instead, she felt a cold dread creeping up her spine. The casual efficiency with which the humans had dispatched the Ultrad, an enemy that had decimated the Alliance's best forces, was terrifying to behold. "You fought them before," she said. "Not a question. They reached Earth once," Hearth replied, eyes still on the data display. We ensure they never returned. Before Rena could respond, the tactical officer shouted a warning. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Ultrad response, fleet incoming. Hearth's expression darkened. They've identified us. Impossible, Yarik protested. Our stealth systems are irrelevant. Hearth cut him off. They've detected human biosignatures. They remember us. On the tactical display, a dozen Ultrad vessels emerge from hyperspace, already moving to surround the planetoid. Evasive action, Rena commanded. Plot a jump course, facility. After our first encounter with the Ultrad, we recognized the existential threat they represented. So you hid, Rena said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. We prepared, Hearth corrected. The alliance was too large, too divided, too dependent on consensus to effectively counter the Ultrad threat. We chose a different path. In the central command chamber, a holographic display showed not just the approaching Ultrad fleet, but dozens of other locations throughout the galaxy. Places where Alliance remnants were still fighting, hiding, surviving. You've been monitoring everything, Yarik realized, his compound eyes reflecting the glowing tactical displays. Knowledge is survival, said a new voice. They turned to see an older human female approaching, her uniform more elaborate than Hearth's, her bearing radiating authority. Admiral Chun, Hearth said, standing at attention. The Alliance representatives, as requested. Admiral Chun studied Rena and Yarik with penetrating eyes. The Ultrad will reach our outer defensive perimeter in 14 hours. Before they arrive, I need to know if what remains of your alliance is worth saving. That's not your decision to make. Rena shot back, her tail lashing in anger. It became our decision when you brought them to our doorstep, Chun replied calmly. Humanity has remained hidden for millennia precisely to avoid this confrontation. Now that it's inevitable, we need to determine if this is a fight for the Alliance's survival or something more. Something more? Yarik asked. The extinction of all sentient life in this galaxy, Chun said bluntly. The Ultrad are not conquerors, they are exterminators. They consume and move on. The Alliance never understood this fundamental truth. Before Rena could respond, an alarm sounded. One of the human officers approached Chun. Admiral, we've received communication from the Bellator system. Alliance survivors are requesting emergency extraction. Ultrad forces are closing in. Chun glanced at Rena. Your people. If there are survivors in Bellator, yes. It was a major cultural center before the fall. Chun made a decision. Dispatch rescue vessels. Maximum stealth protocol. Rena was stunned by this sudden assistance. Thank you, she said cautiously. Don't thank me yet, Chun replied. I need to know what kind of allies we're acquiring. Hearth, show our guests the full extent of our preparations. They should understand what they've become part of. Hearth led Rena and Yarik deeper into the facility, through security checkpoints and down elevators that descended kilometers below the lunar surface. They emerged into a vast chamber that took Rena's breath away. It was a training facility, but unlike any she had seen before. Hundreds of humans, some barely more than children, were engaged in combat exercises against simulated Ultrad opponents. The training was brutal, intense, and executed with frightening precision. Every human child with suitable aptitude is tested at age 7, Hearth explained. Those who qualify begin training immediately. By 15, they're combat ready. You train children for war? Rena asked, horrified. We prepare our species for survival, Hearth corrected. The Ultrad nearly exterminated humanity during our first encounter. We vowed never to be vulnerable again. They continued through the facility, observing weapon manufacturing plants, research laboratories, and strategic planning centers, all dedicated to a single purpose, the defeat of the Ultrad. For 2,000 years, you've been preparing for this moment, Yarik observed, his scientific mind assessing the scale of human preparation. Why not strike first? We considered it, Hearth admitted, but our models indicated that a preemptive strike would fail. The Ultrad are too dispersed, too numerous. We needed them to commit their forces, to expose their command structure. So you used the Alliance as bait, Rena said bitterly. You watched us fall to draw them out. The Alliance was falling regardless, Hearth replied without remorse. Its structure, its very philosophy, made it vulnerable. The Ultrad exploit unity through conformity. It makes targets predictable. They reached a final chamber, a war room where officers were coordinating Earth's defense. On the main display, the Ultrad fleet's approach was tracked in real time. Here's the truth, Commander Vakel, Hearth said, turning to face Rena directly. Humanity withdrew from galactic affairs because we saw this coming centuries ago. The Alliance was built on principles of cooperation and shared governance. Admirable, but fundamentally flawed when facing an enemy like the Ultrad. And your alternative? Rena challenged. Adaptation, evolution, survival at any cost. Hearth gestured to the facility around them. We spent 2 millennia preparing not just our defenses, but our very species for this conflict. Rena studied the humans around her, their focused intensity, their disciplined movements. She had initially seen them as potential saviors, then as frightening warriors. Now she was beginning to see them as something else entirely, a species that had remade itself into the perfect counter to an existential threat. What happens if you win? She asked quietly. What kind of rulers will humans be? Hearth's expression softened slightly, the first real emotion he had shown. We don't want to rule, Commander. We want to survive, and to ensure that what happened to your Alliance never happens again. As they returned to the command center, they received news that the Earth vessels had successfully extracted several hundred Alliance refugees from Bellator. Among them were representatives from species Rena had thought extinct. Watching their arrival through the command center's monitors, Rena felt a surge of hope. Perhaps there was still something worth fighting for, not just survival, but the possibility of rebuilding. Admiral Chen approached, her expression grave. The Ultrad fleet has accelerated. They'll reach our outer defenses in 10 hours. I've ordered the evacuation of Earth's surface facilities. You believe they'll break through? Yerrick asked, alarmed. I believe in preparing for all contingencies, Chen replied. Our defense grid is formidable, but the Ultrad have brought a force unlike anything we've faced before, including something our sensors can identify. Possibly a new class of dreadnought. She turned to Rena. We will defend Earth with everything we have. But should we fail, your ship may be the last hope for many of our people. Are you prepared to accept that responsibility? Rena looked from Chen to Hearth, then to the displays showing Alliance refugees being welcomed onto lunar habitats. In that moment, she saw the beginning of something unexpected. A new alliance, forged in desperation, but perhaps stronger for it. The Silent Strider stands with Earth, she said firmly, as does what remains of the Alliance. Chen nodded, a grim smile touching her lips. Then let's give the Ultrad a proper welcome. As preparations for battle accelerated around them, Rena found a moment alone with Yerrick. Do you trust them? Her advisor asked quietly. Rena considered the question. I trust their commitment to defeating the Ultrad. Beyond that, she watched as human officers coordinated with Alliance refugees, integrating their knowledge into battle plans. I believe they're fighting for survival, not conquest. That will have to be enough for now. And after, Rena's gaze turned toward Earth, beautiful, blue, and heavily fortified. If there is an after, we'll face that question together. #5. Rebirth among the stars. The Ultrad fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly where Earth's defenders predicted, at the edge of the solar system. 7 massive dreadnoughts formed the vanguard, surrounded by smaller vessels that moved in perfect coordination, a machine-like efficiency that had overwhelmed countless Alliance worlds. But this time, they faced an enemy that had been preparing for them for 2,000 years. Defensive grid activated, reported a human officer in the Lunar Command Center. All platforms showing green status. Admiral Chun stood before the tactical display, her posture rigid but calm. Beside her, Commander Hearth coordinated with the strike teams positioned throughout the system. Rena and Yerrick, along with other Alliance representatives, observed from a designated area, witnesses to what might be humanity's finest hour or its last stand. The Ultrad are deploying sensor probes, announced the tactical officer. Standard search pattern. Let them search, Chen replied. All units maintain stealth protocols. For hours, the Ultrad fleet advanced cautiously through the system, clearly wary of ambush. Their sensors swept every asteroid, every orbital plane, finding nothing but empty space. Earth's defenses remaining perfectly concealed. They're entering the kill zone, Hearth reported. Chen nodded. Spring the trap. In an instant, space around the Ultrad fleet shimmered as hundreds of defense platforms deactivated their cloaking systems. Before the enemy could react, the platforms opened fire, not with conventional weapons, but with the space-folding technology Rena had witnessed earlier. The effect was devastating. Dozens of smaller Ultrad vessels simply vanished, relocated to random coordinates throughout the system. The formation broke, confusion evident in their movements for the first time Rena could remember. But the dreadnoughts remained untouched, their defensive systems somehow resistant to the relocation technology. As expected, Chen commented. Initiate Phase 2. From behind Mars and its moons, a fleet of Earth warships appeared, sleek, predatory vessels that accelerated toward the disrupted Ultrad formation. They engaged with precision, targeting command nodes and propulsion systems with conventional weapons. Where Alliance warships would have employed massive energy barges, humans used surgical strikes, disabling rather than destroying. Their tactics are unusual, Yerrick observed, mandibles clicking in a pattern Rena recognized as confusion. They're not trying to win through superior firepower, Chen explained without taking her eyes off the tactical display. We're isolating components of their fleet, disrupting their coordination. The battle unfolded like nothing Rena had witnessed before. The human vessels moved in complex, seemingly random patterns that nonetheless formed a perfect web around the Ultrad ships. Individual Ultrad vessels found themselves cut off, their networked intelligence disrupted by precision jamming. But the dreadnoughts remained a problem. They advanced relentlessly toward Earth, shrugging off attacks that would have vaporized Alliance capital ships. The lead dreadnought is deploying something, reported a sensor officer. Configuration unknown. On the display, an object emerged from the largest Ultrad vessel, a sphere of swirling dark energy that seemed to bend light around it. The architect, Hearth said quietly, and Rena was startled to hear actual fear in his voice. The sphere expanded rapidly, and, as it did, the coordination of the Ultrad fleet visibly improved. Disabled vaisselle rectivated, scattered formation realigned. It's providing direct command and control, Chen realized. Neutralize that sphere. All available assets. Earth's defenses concentrated fire on the anomaly, but weapons seemed to pass through it without effect. Meanwhile, the sphere emitted pulses of energy that swept across human ships, causing several to lose power and drift. We can't affect it with conventional weapons, Hearth reported. Switching to Protocol Omega. Chen hesitated, then nodded grimly. Authorized. Hearth opened a secure channel. All Vanguard units, this is command. Omega Protocol is now active. Authorization Chen Alpha 7. From the lunar surface, a dozen small vessels launched, different from the warships, more angular, built for speed rather than firepower. Each carried only a single occupant. What are those? Rena asked. Our last resort, Chen answered. Special operators with enhanced capabilities. Enhanced how? Chen's expression remained impassive. There are lines even we were reluctant to cross. But the Ultrad left us no choice. The small vessels raced toward the lead dreadnought, evading defensive fire with inhuman precision. 3 were destroyed, but the others reached their target, attaching themselves to the massive ship's hull like parasites. Breach teams deployed, Hearth reported. Estimated time to objective, 7 minutes. On a secondary display, Rena could see feed from the operator's helmet cameras as they moved through the Ultrad vessel. They encountered resistance, of course, security drones and warrior constructs, But the humans moved with impossible speed, their reflexes enhanced beyond normal limits. Cybernétique augmentation hiérique whispered. Neural interfaces. They've merged with their technology. Rena watched in horrified fascination as the human operators fought their way to the dreadnought's core. Their movements were fluid yet mechanical, their coordination perfect. When wounded, they showed no pain, no hesitation. They're reaching the central chamber, Hearth announced. The feed showed a vast spherical room, at the center of which hovered a smaller version of the dark energy sphere visible outside, the local manifestation of the architect. The human operators surrounded it, placing devices at equidistant points around the chamber. One operator approached the sphere directly, seemingly unaffected by the energy that had disabled ships. Final package deployed, came the emotionless report. Detonation in 30 seconds. All units, disengage and retreat, Chen ordered. Prepare for shockwave. The operators didn't evacuate. They remained at their posts, ensuring the devices stayed in place even as Ultra defenses converged on their position. They're staying behind, Rena realized. They're sacrificing themselves. Chen nodded once, a muscle in her jaw tightening. They knew the mission parameters. The countdown reached 0. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the dreadnought's exterior buckled as an implosion consumed its core. The dark energy sphere outside flickered and dispersed like smoke and wind. The effect on the Ultrad fleet was immediate and dramatic. Without the architect's coordination, their perfect formations dissolved into chaos. Some vessels crashed into each other, others fired on friendly targets, and many simply drifted powerless. The architect is neutralized, Hearth confirmed. All units pressed the advantage. Earth's forces surged forward, methodically disabling or destroying the disorganized Ultrad ships. It wasn't a battle anymore, it was a rout. Within hours, it was over. The Ultrad fleet was destroyed or scattered, their threat to Earth neutralized. But the cost had been high. Dozens of human vessels lost, hundreds of lives sacrificed, including all the enhanced operators. In the aftermath, as damage reports flowed in and recovery operations began, Admiral Chun approached Rena and Yerrick. Now you've seen what humanity is capable of, she said quietly. Both our strength and our sacrifice. Those operators, Rena began. They were volunteers, Chun interrupted firmly. Every one of them. They knew what was at stake. Rena nodded, understanding even if she didn't fully accept it. What happens now? Chun gestured to a display showing incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of our victory is spreading. Alliance remnants are emerging from hiding, seeking contact. A new beginning, Yerrick suggested cautiously. Perhaps, Chun allowed. But first, we have work to do. The Ultrad will regroup. This was one battle, not the war. In the days that followed, as Earth's defenses were repaired and reinforced, representatives from dozens of surviving Alliance worlds arrived. Some came in barely functioning ships. Others had been in hiding for years on occupied worlds. All brought the same message. Hope had returned to the galaxy. Rena found herself in the unlikely role of diplomat, bridging the gap between the reclusive humans and the diverse species of the old Alliance. It wasn't easy. Centuries of isolation had left humans wary of alien influence, while the Alliance survivors were both grateful for and terrified of Earth's military prowess. 2 weeks after the battle, a formal council was convened in a recently constructed space station orbiting Earth's moon. Representatives from 17 former Alliance worlds attended, along with human officials led by Admiral Chun. The old Alliance failed because it was built on idealism without pragmatism, Chun stated bluntly in her opening address. Earth has no interest in replacing it with an empire. But neither will we return to isolation while the Ultrad threat remains. What do you propose? Asked a representative from Keldunis, a world that had been among the first to fall. A covenant, Chin replied, not based on shared governance or cultural exchange, but on mutual defense. Earth will provide technology, training, and protection. In return, we ask for resources, intelligence, and forward bases from which to continue the fight against the Ultrad. There was murmuring among the representatives. It wasn't the answer many had hoped for, not a return to the golden age of the Alliance, but something more martial, more focused. And when the Ultrad are defeated? Rena asked. What then? Chun looked at her directly. Then we can discuss a more comprehensive relationship. But first, we survive. The terms were negotiated over several days, with Rena often serving as mediator. The final agreement, dubbed the Solar Covenant, established Earth as the military center of a defensive pact encompassing all willing survivors of the Alliance. As the representatives prepared to return to their worlds with news of the Covenant, Commander Harth sought out Rena in the observation deck overlooking Earth. You played your role well, he said, standing beside her at the viewport. They trust you in ways they don't trust us. Rena studied the beautiful blue planet below. They fear you, with good reason. Fear can be useful, but not as a foundation for the future. Rena turned to face him. Your people have remained hidden for centuries, preparing for war. What happens when that war ends? Can humans remember how to live in peace? Harth considered this, his expression thoughtful for once rather than calculating. I don't know, he admitted finally. None of us alive today have experienced a world without the Ultrad threat. It has shaped everything. Our education, our research, our very evolution as a species. Then perhaps when this is over, the Alliance can help remind you, Rena suggested. That was always its strength, not military might, but cultural exchange. Growth through diversity. A small smile touched Harth's lips. Perhaps. But first, we survive, Rena finished for him. Yes, I know. In the months that followed, Earth's defensive strategy expanded across the galaxy. Human strike teams, equipped with technology the Alliance had never imagined, systematically dismantled Ultrad outposts and command centers. Alliance worlds were liberated one by one, their populations emerging from hiding to rebuild. The Ultrad, for the first time in recorded history, were in retreat. Rumors spread through the stars, whispered tales of the humans, the legendary species that had returned from self-imposed exile to save the galaxy. Some called them saviors. Others used darker terms, warriors bred for combat, willing to cross ethical lines the Alliance had always respected. Both perspectives held truth. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, as it came to be known, Rena stood on the bridge of a new vessel, the Covenant, a hybrid design combining human stealth technology with Alliance environmental systems. She commanded a mixed crew, humans serving alongside species from a dozen worlds. Commander called her communications officer, a young human named Alara, one of many who had volunteered for integration duty. We're receiving a transmission from Sector 9. Another Ultrad command, node destroyed. Rena nodded, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. Sector 9 had been the site of her homeworld's destruction. Send congratulations to the strike team. Tell them to proceed to the next target. As Alara turned back to her console, Yurik approached, datapad in hand. The latest intelligence reports, he said, mandibles clicking in what Rena now recognized as cautious optimism. Ultrad forces have withdrawn from the Outer Rim entirely. They're consolidating around their core territories. Fear, Rena said. They're experiencing it for the first time. A dangerous enemy is a cornered enemy, Yurik warned. The worst fighting may still lie ahead. Let it come, Rena replied, gazing at the starfield beyond the viewport. We're ready now. On the tactical display, dozens of green indicators showed Covenant vessels throughout the galaxy, each carrying the same message to friend and foe alike. The darkness was receding, pushed back by an alliance of necessity that might, in time, become something more. Humanity had emerged from hiding, neither as conquerors nor saviors, but as guardians, their power tempered by the wisdom of the Alliance, their isolation ended by shared purpose. And among the stars, worlds that had known only fear began to remember hope. The Ultrad were not defeated. Perhaps they never would be entirely, but they were contained, hunted, their inexorable advance finally halted. The Architect, though dispersed at Earth, was rumored to exist in other forms elsewhere in the galaxy. The war would continue, but for the first time since the fall began, the outcome was no longer certain. The balance had shifted. In her quarters later that night, Rena recorded a message to be sent to the growing number of liberated worlds. We are not the alliance that was. We cannot be. That world is gone, and pretending otherwise would dishonor those we lost. Nor are we an empire, bound by conquest or domination. We are something new, forged in darkness but reaching toward light. The humans call it a covenant, a promise written in sacrifice and sealed with shared purpose. Let history decide what to name us. For now, it is enough to say, we endure, we fight, and in time, we will rebuild what was lost, not as it was, but as it needs to be. As the message was transmitted across the stars, the Covenant continued its patrol, a shadow moving through the darkness, carrying with it the most dangerous weapon the Ultrad had ever faced, not the humans' advanced technology or tactical brilliance, but the one thing the Ultrad could never understand, the capacity to change, to adapt, to evolve beyond mere survival. The galaxy would never return to what it had been. But perhaps, Rena thought as she watched distant suns through her viewport, it might become something better. The fire of humanity, long hidden, now burned brightly among the stars, not consuming, but illuminating the path forward. And in that light, a scattered alliance found its way home.